All right, Rabbi, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin a good tovos. Zechus Baruch Hashem. To begin the week, journey up to Pesach, Emirat Hashem, Haba Aleinu L'Tova with a new daf, Emirat Hashem, beautiful daf, really. Actually, I want to give you coming attractions this week. Ridiculous. It's too good. So good it should be illegal. That's how good this is. Baruch Hashem. I just want to say, so begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. To thank our annual TALMUD TORAH sponsor for Tafshin Pei Hey, the Tilson Mishpacha of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Sherman drushos as a zechus for besuros tovos for Am Yisroel. Our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Adar, Teri and Steve Czinn, in loving memory of Teri's father, Dr. Harry Kahn, Tzvi, Hersch, ben Yosef, HaKohen, and the Ziv, Lavine, and Behrman families of memory of Mr. Willian Ziv, Zev Shmuel, ben Yisrael, Zechron Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the neshamos Lavine Aliyah, the families in Nechama, all of those who need a refuah shav and chedot kol cholei Yisrael, Kadosh Baruch Hu Shneimir Hashem, bring home all of our hostages and allow our holy soldiers to be successful b'chol maaseh yedehem. Let's do that. Let us begin. Today's daf is Pei Tes 89. We are picking up at the Mishnah on Pei Tes. The Mishnah says as follows. Hopefully you did your homework. Right. Rabbi Richter assigned some homework last night at the end of Shir. Hashem. If I don't start on the right daf on Sunday, there's absolutely no chance. And plus, if you look ahead, we have some incredible agadah ahead of us this week, but some very long daf in the head of us as well. So, got to give myself a fighting chance. Says the Mishnah on Pei Tes 89a, Am Yisroel. So just remember again, we are still on the incredible sugya of Zakin Mamre. Say Am Yisroel, Loba Bezin should be Irav, Loba Bezin should be Yavne. So remember again, when we've learned already the halachas concerning when a Zakin Mamre is put to death, what type of machloksim really make him into a Zakin Mamre. Now when it comes to the actual execution of the Zakin Mamre, so the Mishnah says, we do not execute him in the Beis Din in his city, nor do we execute him in the Beis Din in Yavne. Now by the way, what's the Beis Din in Yavne? So if you look at Rashi is about 3 lines down from the top. Loba Beis Din shel Yavne, Nishalu lebeis din shabalishkas hagozis. V'amru lahem v'chazru le'ira v'shay yamim ad shegalsa Sanhedrin gidola liyavne v'adayin habayis kayum v'achar ekein horeke b'tchila Am Yisroel b'Yavne. So remember again, interestingly enough, Yavne was one of the locations that the Beis Hamikdash was exiled to. So what the Mishnah is saying is like this: in order to go ahead and execute the Zakin Mamre, the Sanhedrin HaGadol has to be situated in the Lishkas HaGozis, in the chamber of hewn stone, in the Beis Hamikdash compound. So if the Sanhedrin is not sitting in its place, rightful place, even if the Beis Hamikdash is still standing, you can't execute the Zakin Mamre. Ella, Malin also the Beis Hamikdash Yerushalayim. We take the Zakin Mamre up to the Beis Hamikdash, to the High Court in Yerushalayim. Umishamrin also ad haregel, umamisin also beregel. So what we do is we incarcerate him, essentially, put him in a holding cell until the next upcoming regal, to the next upcoming Yom Tiv, one of the regalim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. I just want to point out, how incredible is this? Remember again, this is the first daf, really the first post-Purim daf, and what does it make reference to? The regalim. Right? Everyone's on a journey. Everyone, mamish, is like, we're always journeying to something else. So we finish. It's the beauty of the Yid, right? The Yid is never stationary. It's never like, okay, let's sit back, reflect. That's it. We're always traveling towards the next thing. So Purim is now behind us. At least again, we're not yet privileged to be residents of Yerushalayim. So again, for the rest of Klal Yisrael, Purim's a little bit behind us. But now again, Baruch Hashem, it's okay. When something's behind us, there's always something new right in front of us. Pesach is ahead. So again, according to the first opinion, the Mishnah will see, they keep the Zakin Mamre in a holding cell up until the next regal, up until the next Yom Tiv. We execute him on Yom Tiv. Which is fascinating. Now, why? Why Shne'emar v'chala'am yishmu'u v'iro v'lo yezidun al divrei Rabbi Akiva? Because the pasuk says literally, the entire nation will hear, they will fear, and essentially they will not follow in the footsteps. These words Rabbi Akiva. So what essentially Rabbi Akiva says is like this: we got to make a spectacle out of this. In other words, people have to see this. People have to understand this. There has to be a public part to this, so that again, unfortunately, people see this kind of thing. We see this by Sota also. People see certain things, it has a Rosh on. So Rabbi Akiva says, we dafka don't execute him until the regalim, so that should become a public spectacle. Rabbi Yehuda says no. So Rabbi Yehuda says no. We do not delay judgment like that. In other words, there's absolutely no need to do that. So what we do is we execute him immediately. And what do we do? So here's the issue. Everyone agrees that midoraisa, you need some element of publicity with this. So according to Rabbi Akiva, the publicity component essentially is established by holding him until the regalim and executing him again on the regal. Rabbi Yehuda says no, we don't do that. We'll say Ema Anes Adin means we do not corrupt judges. If somebody's liable to death penalty, you execute him. In other words, we're not going to go ahead and hold him potentially for months at a time. Rather, go ahead and execute him. And what we'll do is we'll send out letters. We'll send out letters to all the communities saying, Ish ploni mischai misa bezdin. And again, that's how we'll go ahead and we'll fulfill the publicity piece. We'll write about it and we will send it out. Incredible. So we'll say fundamental machlokes about how we go ahead, or I should say, when we go ahead and execute the zakin mamre. Good. Tanabanan. Let's analyze. Am Yisroel also. Lo bevezin shavira. So we'll say now the Gemara quotes the Brisa, which pretty much echoes the Mishnah. So the Brisa says as follows: Am Yisroel also. Lo bevezin shavira. So we don't execute the zakin mamre in his local bezdin. But lo bevezin shaviyavne. Not even in the bezdin Yavne. Once again, the bezdin in Yavne. Yavne is where the Sanhedrin itself was exiled to. Ella, Malin also lebezin Gadash Yerushalayim. Rather, again, what do? We bring the Zakin Mamre up to the High Court in Yerushalayim. Umishamrin also ad haregel, and we wait. We hold him, right? We hold him in the holding cell up until Yom Tiv. Umemisin also beregel, and we execute him on the Yom Tiv. Shneimar b'chala Am Yishmuel v'iro divrei Rabbi Akiva, because the pasuk says everyone will hear and they will fear. They will fear. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. So again, remember, Rabbi Akiva is dashing the v'chol ha'am. When are you going to have a time when everybody can hear about this? When Klal Yisrael is assembled in Yerushalayim for the regal. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, v'chi ne'emar yiru v'yirau. Does the pasuk say that they should fear and they should see? In other words, Rabbi Akiva is making this about that people should see the Zakin Mamre executed. Rabbi Yehuda says, does the pasuk say that they should fear and they should see? V'alo ne'emar ela yishmu'u v'yirau. All it says is that they should hear and they should fear. So essentially, again, Rabbi Yehuda says, as long as people hear about it, they don't need to see it. I don't need to see it. As long as they hear about it, that's more than enough. Furthermore, again, why go ahead and delay his judgment? I will say, it's interesting that Rabbi Yehuda understands this to be like an inui din. Inui din literally means like corruption of the din. It's an interesting yesod in life. We know life is, I have like a little bit of an ongoing, it's not a joke, but okay, I'll call it a joke. Like every child has stuff that their parents will always say over and over and over. So in my family, it's like a little bit of a joke, like the mantra, like I like to always try to tell my kids, is whatever is going on in life, lean into it. Just lean into it. Again, we spend so much time getting upset about things that don't go our way, or lamenting things that don't go our way, or trying to pretend like they're not. Just lean into it. Sometimes in life is so much about taking whatever the current circumstance is, just lean into it and just go with it. You're going to be great. You're going to be fine. You're going to figure it out. So it's interesting. Sometimes the greatest anxiety in life is when you know that something negative is going to happen, but it's not happening now. I'm like waiting for the. I know it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. It's not. Sometimes in life you don't know how something's going to turn out. That's one level of anxiety. But then I know. I know what is going to happen. So it's almost like Rabbi Yehuda says, why would you do this to this person? Okay, I got it. He's going to be executed. He's Zakin Mamre. So you got to execute him. You definitely have to execute him. But why would you delay it? What's the point of this? Also, we've seen this motif before that. Even when you have to execute someone, you have to execute with Rachmanis, Now, to the world, that might sound like a little bit of a contradiction, but a Jew understands that sometimes you have to do difficult things, but difficult things have to be done with Rachmanis as well. So the Zaken Mamre, okay, he bought his ticket, that's it, he's going to be executed, but why delay it? Just lean into get it over with, and that's it. So Rabbi, do Elam Amisano Somiyad, the Kosin Shulchan B'chol Makom, Ish Plonin is Chai Misa Bebezdin. And again, so how do we fulfill the publicity piece? Write letters and send out the letters to all the different Jewish communities. So-and-so is executed as a Zaken Mamre. So we'll say, so this is the fundamental machlokes, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda, about how we execute the Zaken Mamre. Okay, incredible. Tan Rabbanon. So we'll say, let's go back to Tan Rabbanon. Arba Tzrichin Hachrasa. Now, it's interesting, I will say, because clearly what you see with the Zaken Mamre is, it's not just that we execute him, but there is this din of this publicity to it, that people have to see and people have to know what it is that's happened. So the Gemara says, by the way, there are four situations where in general, it's not just enough to execute, but a public announcement has to be made. Who are they? Number one, Hamesis. Mesis is the one who goes out and incites others to worship Avodah Zarah. Ben Sorer Umora, Zaken Mamre, and Eidim Zomamin. Interesting. All of these four need hachraza. They need announcements. Rashi says over hachraza, Ploni meis bebezin al sha'avra averazu kedei lirdos es ha'achirim. So literally, Beis will announce, so-and-so is executed because he committed a particular avera, and all of this is done in order to create a public example that people shouldn't follow suit. The Gemara says, Kulu ksebuhu v'chol ha'am v'chol Yisrael. So ultimately, again, v'chol ha'am. So by all of these situations, it says v'chol ha'am, the entire nation will see. Interestingly enough, v'chol Yisrael be'edim zomin ksev anisharim delo kuli amma chazul l'sahadusa. Sorry. So as I say, interestingly enough, by edim zomin, the lashon is v'hanisharim. Those who are left over, right? Those who remain. Why doesn't it use the same expansive lashon ultimately again as kol ha'am v'chol Yisrael? What's the reason? The reason is because by eidos, not everyone is fit for eidos. Eidos is always a more limited pool. Why? Because the Rebbe said there are certain limitations. A person gambles, they can't go ahead and do eidos, right? A person commits an avera, or certain averas can't do eidos. So because eidos itself is not open to the general public, therefore again the public admonition of it also doesn't have to be, or is not as sweeping as the other circumstances. Okay, the Rebbe say, beautiful Gemara Mishnah. It's only 8:12 on a Sunday. We've already done a whole Mishnah, a whole Gemara. It's great. Mishnah, Navi Sheker. Navi HaSheker. Supposed to say, next guy who's Chayim Misa. Navi Sheker, false prophet. Okay? So what is he? Hamisnave Mashalo Shama, Umashalo Ne'emar Lo. So we'll say, so what is a Navi Sheker? So again, there are a couple of different examples of this. Number one could be a person who prophesied something that he did not hear. Okay? Or something that was not said to him. Interestingly enough, we'll see what does it mean something was not said to him. So let's say again, I'm standing around with my friend at Kiddush. A lot of stuff happens at Kiddush, right? So what happens? My friend gets nevuah at Kiddush. By the way, many people think they get nevuah at Kiddush, right? Especially by your third Kiddush. Suddenly again, you're prophesizing for Gans Klal, right? So what happens? I'm standing next to Ruvain. Ruvain gets a nevuah. Now it happens to be, it's a legitimate nevuah, right? Case number one is, I prophesied something that Kadosh Baruch Hu did not say. Case number two, Tzvi Shalom gave my friend nevuah. I heard, however that happens, right? I heard the nevuah, and I say it over. That's not my prophecy to give. That also falls under the category, under the umbrella of Navi Sheker. The Gemara says in these cases, misaso b'dei adam. So these individuals, right, the Navi Sheker is executed by a court. Avala kovesh es nevuaso. So I'll say this is fascinating. Kovesh es nevuaso is someone who receives nevuah but refuses to share it. Like kovesh means like to conquer something. So receive nevuah and refuse to share it. Vamevater al divrei navi, or one who goes ahead and simply ignores the word of a navi. V'navi sha'avra al divrei atzmo, or a navi who receives nevuah but violates the own nevuah that he received. So all of these cases, misaso, first white line, misaso b'dei shamayim. All these individuals again get mis b'dei shamayim, death at the hands of heaven. Incredible. Shneimar anochi edrosh me'imo. Hamistavi b'shnei avodos kochav. Again, we're going to get into all these cases in just a little bit. If somebody prophesizes in the name of an avodah zarah, and what happens? And again, the person says literally again, this is what the avodah kochavim says. Even if what? Even if what he's saying is factually correct. Let's say a person comes along and says, I hereby say in the name of avodah zarah that one is supposed to, avoid kindling a fire on Shabbos. Okay, right? So in other words, Mishnah says, even though he's not saying anything wrong, and what he's saying is actually in alignment with what we believe as well, the fact that he's giving it over in the name of an avodah zarah by definition makes him liable. Haba al ish, a person commits adultery. Kevan shenichnas al rishus abal nisuin afapi shlo nivala. Haba aleh bechenek. So again, if a man has relations with a married woman, even if this married woman has not yet lived with her husband, I don't know, so she had erusin and not nisuin, or they just got married, they had nisuin, but again, they did not yet live together. The halacha is the boel, the adulterer, is punished by chenek. So ultimately, again, I've also we've seen this before. Remember, a bas kohen who commits adultery, what's her din? Sreifa. But remember again, that's a unique din for her. It does not apply to her adulterer, nor does it apply to edim zomimin, right? Meaning witnesses who testified falsely about her. Shekal hamuzmin makdimin la'osam yisachutz mizomin bas kohen ubala. Because in general, again, the way it works with edim zomin is what? They get reciprocal punishment. The exception to this is edim zomin by a bas kohen, because she gets sreifa, but they, as well as the adulterer, will get chanek. Okay, incredible. So let's analyze. Says the Gemara, Tarabanan, Shlosha misasim midei Adam, or Shlosha misasim midei Shemayim. So there are three, these are all categories of false prophecy. Three of them ultimately, again, are killed by a court, and three of them are midei Shemayim. Okay, so what are they? Hamisnave mashalo shama, umashalo ne'emar lo. Shabbos says, so ultimately, again, a person goes ahead and prophesizes something, or I should say, they espouse a prophecy that was not said. In other words, essentially, they're inventing prophecy. Now, again, this is prophecy in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? So a person is just inventing prophecy, or they go ahead and they convey prophecy that was said to someone else, but not to them. Or hamisnavi b'shem avodos kochavim, right? Hamisnavi b'shem avodos kochavim. Or a person goes ahead and prophesizes in the name of avodah zarah, right? As we said before, even if what they're saying is factually correct, the halacha is misasan bidei adam. All three of these individuals are executed by a human court. Hakovish es nevuah, so a navi who receives a nevuah but does not share it. Hamevata divrei navi, or somebody who disregards the words of a navi. The navi sha'avra al divrei atzmo, or a navi who disregards his own prophecy. Misasan b'dei shamayim. Ultimately, again, their death is at the hands of heaven. And I will say, it's interesting to note this idea. Misnave mashalo shama. I understand why, if somebody prophesizes, this person says, I received the nevuah from Hashem, and they give over information that they did not receive, I understand why there's a chi of misa. Right? It makes sense. You're inventing prophecy. And I will say, but if I go ahead and I hear a prophecy given to someone else and I give it over, I understand that it's not good. Why is it a chi of misa? Like what's, in other words, I'm not making up new information. The information is factual. The information is correct. Well, now again, we'll see the pasuk. We'll see why it is. But I will say, like, hashkafically, what's wrong with him? And I will say, the worst avera a person could commit in life is trying to be someone else. At the end of the day, the avodah in life is never to be someone else. The avodah is to become the best version of you. So when a person gives over prophecy that was given to someone else, that prophecy was given to Ruvain. It's not mine. When I take that prophecy and I now make it mine, that's me trying to become Ruvain. Well, the avodah of trying to become someone else in life, that's not your tachlis. That's not your tachlis. It's such an interesting thing because we often spend so much time trying to become other people. We see other people who kind of represent us like a model of success, and then, I want to be that guy. Now, again, there's something to be learned from every individual. As Izu Chacham Halomim Nikol Adam, right? I can learn from every person. But my avodah is never to become someone else. So this notion, when you take the nevuah that was given to someone else and you make it your own, that is the highest fundamental level of personalistic abdication. That again, my avodah is to be me and to be the best version of me. You take someone else's nevuah and you make it your own. Schai Misa. What are you doing? That's not a life. Because we'll say, if you fall into that trap, you're always trying to become someone else. Right? Because there's always someone better. There's always someone more successful. There's always someone this. Don't spend your life trying to be like other people, but rather spend your life trying to become the best version of you. Incredible. All right, let's go back to says the Gemara. Good. Minhani Mili. So where do we know all this from? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Damar Kra, because the pasuk says, "Achanavi asher yazid ledaber davar b'shmi." So we'll say, so ultimately again, the Navi who will intentionally try to say something over in my name. That who's that? Zem stav mashalo shama. That refers to a Navi who invented a prophecy and is giving over something that was not given to him. Okay, Chayv Nisa. Next, Vasher lo tzivisiv. I did not command it to him. But that infers that I did command it to another Navi. So what is that referring to? That refers ultimately again to a prophet who gives over something that was not said to him. And he will go ahead and say something over the name of another God. That refers to someone who prophesizes in the name of idolatry. Again, remember, we'll say, what's the kunz of that? The kunz of that is even if what? Even if informationally what you are saying is correct, the fact that it's being given over the name of Avodah Zarah makes it liable to death. Uksev, and in all of these cases, what does the pasuk say? Umeis hanavi hahu. This prophet will be put to death. Stam. And I will say again, stam, whenever the Torah says a death penalty, but doesn't identify which death penalty, the default is chenek. Good. So we'll say that's our first three. Next, Hakovish has nevu also. V'amavarta al divrei navi. V'navi sha'avra al divrei atzmo misas v'dei shamayim. We'll say, what about the next three? This is someone who prophesizes, but again, holds back his prophecy, doesn't share it. Mevater disregards the words of the Navi. Or number three, a Navi who violates his own nevuah. So all these people are put to death b'dei shamayim. Where do we know this from? Dichsev va'ish asher lo yishma. So we'll say the pasuk says the person will not, the Navi will not listen. Karibei lo yashmiya. So we can learn as not only lo yishma, but what? Lo yashmiya, he will not make it be heard. Which means what? He's holding back his own prophecy. Karibei lo yashmiya, Karibei lo yishma. El divrei, right? El divrei. Uksiv anochi edrosh mi'imo b'dei shamayim. Okay, so we'll say, so again, in that one pasuk is someone who hears it, disregards it, right? Someone who hears his own prophecy, disregards it, and somebody else who hears the words of the Navi, disregards it, and the Navi ultimately, again, who is kovesh es nevu also, does not share his nevuah. Hamisnave mashalo shama. So now the Gemara gives some examples of this. We'll say, also, okay, fine. We'll expound on that a little bit later. So a person prophesizes something he did not hear. So the Gemara gives an example of this. Kigon, Tzidkiah ben Kenano. Like Tzidkiah ben Kenano. Who's Tzidkiah ben Kenano? Tichsev, Vayas lo Tzidkiah ben Kenano, Karne Barzel. So we'll say, this is interesting, by the way. So this is the story in Navi of where Aram was attacking Klal Yisrael. And there was an interesting alliance. Remember again, there's a split kingdom of Malchus Yisrael and Malchus Yehuda. The king of Malchus Yisrael was a man by the name of Achav, and the king over Malchus Yehuda was a man by the name of Yoshaphat. Yoshaphat was very righteous. Achav, unfortunately, was righteously challenged, and but they realized that they have to form an alliance in order to combat Aram. So Yoshaphat's like, I'll go with you, but I need some prophecy to back this up. Because it's like a shtickle unholy alliance, but sometimes you need an unholy alliance to accomplish holy objectives. So but Yoshaphat's like, I just need a Navi. So Achav produces, Achav's got no shortage. You pay enough money, you can find plenty of prophets, right? So in other words, Achav's producing hundreds of prophets, and still Yoshaphat is not exactly convinced. So there was this other guy, Tzidkiah ben Kenana, who did something interesting. So what does Tzidkiah ben Kenana do? He makes iron horns. And it was supposed to symbolize the fact that Klal Yisrael was going to gore Aram. they were going to be successful. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows. So now what I want to point out, Tzidkiah really received prophecy. He really did receive prophecy. But ultimately, again, what we're going to see was a shtickle false prophecy. Because again, what ends up happening in this battle is Achav is killed in this battle. All of this whole thing was HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way to lure Achav into battle so that Achav would die in battle. So the Gemara says, "My what should Tzidkiah have done?" Ruach navos atiises. This is a wild story. So Tzidkiah was deceived by a spirit. Whose spirit? The spirit of Navos. We'll say if that name sounds familiar. Remember, Navos had a beautiful vineyard that Achav very much wanted. But Navos wouldn't sell. So Achav has a wife by the name of Izebel. Izebel convinced her husband Achav to essentially bring Navos up on false charges and have him executed. Navos was executed, and ultimately Achav takes the vineyard. So what happened? So the spirit of Navos came back and kind of appeared to Tzidkiah, making it look like it was HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order to get Achav to go out to battle so that Achav would fall in battle. Okay, the Gemara says, "Dichsev, Vayomer Hashem, mi yifates Achav, vayal v'yapa v'yipol b'ramos Gilad." So HaKadosh Baruch Hu put out a call, like to the neshamas, who is willing to go down and fool Achav into going to war? So a spirit came before and said, "Vayomer ani afatenu, I will go and entice Achav to go to war." Vayomer tifta v'gam tuchal tzei v'asakin. Or Rabbi Yehuda might say, what does it mean when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to the spirit, which turns out to be the spirit of Navos, "Go, semi mechitzasi, you have to leave me"? So we'll say this is actually incredible. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu essentially was saying to the neshamas, whichever one of the neshamas wants to go, you can go, but after you go, you can't come back here. Why not? Because the job of this spirit was to deliver a false prophecy. The Ribono Shel Olam is all MS, and something that is not MS cannot reside inside of the confines of the Ribono Shel Olam celestial sphere. My ruach, what's the ruach? Rabbi Yochanan, ruach shel Navos Yisraeli. So ultimately, again, it was the spirit of Navos Yisraeli who was there to avenge his death by misleading Achav going out into battle. So that was the spirit that appeared to Tzidkiah ben Kenana. So 1 second. So Tzidkiah should have been a little bit more vigilant. Signon echad ola lekam neviim, ve'in shnei neviim mistavim besignon echad. So I'll say, interestingly enough, you could have many prophets that have the same prophetic message, but each of them get it in a different way. So we'll say, this is actually really fascinating. That prophecy, you can have multiple prophets receiving the same message, but no two prophets receive, or for that matter, again, convey the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the same way. So the Gemara goes right to Ovadja Amar, Zodon libecha hisiacha. Yirmiyah Amar, Tiflatzascha hesioscha, Zodon libecha. So again, just examples of Nevi'im conveying the same general concept, but each of them receiving it and conveying it in a slightly different way. I will say it's actually a very beautiful idea, because if you think about it, what's Nevuah? Nevuah represents almost like the highest level of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what is the Gemara saying? No two people could have the same relationship. Two people could receive basically the same message, but the way that message is received and the way that message is conveyed varies from person to person. A really profound yesod, which of course is not just true by Nevuah, but it's true by every element of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No two Jews have the same relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have the same Tariq mitzvos, the same halachos, the same shulchan aruch, but at the end of the day, the way we relate to God, the way we interact with God, the relationship we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu varies, maybe even slightly, but nevertheless there's a variance between one Jew and the next. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, good. Bahani midika amri kulu kahadadi shma mina lo klum ka'amri. So ultimately, again, so Tzidkiah should have realized. Now, what should Tzidkiah have realized? So Achav had hundreds of prophets that were saying the same thing. When you have hundreds of people saying the same thing, that's a red flag. That's exactly the same thing. That's a prophetic red flag. It's Tzidkiah should have realized there's something going on over here. The Gemara says, so one second, maybe Tzidkiah didn't know the same with Rabbi Yitzchak. Maybe Tzidkiah didn't know that prophets can't have the same prophecy. Maybe he just didn't know this halacha. To which the Gemara says, Yoshafat havahasam v'kamra lahu. Dechsiva yomer Yoshafat ha'ein po navi. Yoshafat was there. And Yoshafat knew this. That's why Yoshafat, even though Achav produced hundreds of Nevi'im, Yoshafat said, there's something wrong over here. There's something wrong over here because everyone is saying the same exact thing. So I just want to point out how profound this is. So not only is it an incredible lesson in terms of like our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that all of us interact and relate and have a different relationship with Hashem. It also ties in something like Klal Yisrael. Sometimes we think that what's the utopian view of Klal Yisrael? Can you imagine hundreds of Jews sitting together and saying the same exact thing? That's what was happening over here. To which the Gemara says, that's terrible. That's terrible. I don't want hundreds of Jews saying the same thing. You know what I want? I want hundreds of Jews saying different things, and yet all of them sitting in the same room together and being madly in love with one another. That's Achdus. That's Achdus. We have this very skewed view of Achdus, that Achdus means like unanimity. You know, everyone's on the same page. So lo haya v'lo yeya. Never happened, never will happen. I've said it a million times, right? What does Rashi say by Har Sinai? By Har Sinai we were ish echad v'lev echad. One people with one heart. My Rabbi always said, it never says ish echad b'dea achas. It doesn't say one people with one opinion. It's one people with one heart. One people with one heart. So I have to. In my Purim Suda, we had this. So somebody was making a l'chaim. They had a little bit too much to drink, and he started making l'chaim. And this is a member of my family who skews a little bit more right, a little more right. He started going on about, and Amiras Hashem, there should be a world in which yeshiva students aren't drafted. He went on, and literally. Everyone, my wife looked at me. She's like, "Don't say anything." You know, it's one of those looks. Okay, so I held it together for about 10 seconds, but the rest of the people in my Suda did not, and they jumped on this particular member of my family, and it was like, and then what was so beautiful. Is that right afterwards, Baruch Hashem, after this went on for it felt like about 3 hours, but it was Purim time, so it might have been 30 seconds, but whatever it is, everything moved slower. But also, what the most beautiful thing was that at the end, the way it ended is, I don't know how, I don't remember all the events, but somehow it started like that, and then about 3 minutes, whatever it was, there was just a circle of grown men holding each other, sobbing. Like I said, I don't know exactly what happened, right? But Lamaisa will say, isn't that what it's about? Isn't that what it's about? It's about the ability to hug people, even if you vehemently disagree with them. It's about the ability to love people, even though you think they're absolutely, unequivocally wrong and have missed the mark every single step of the way. That you think that what they are saying is the most uninformed, unintelligent, incorrect thing in the world, but I love you. But I love you. So when you see hundreds of people saying the same thing about saying, no, we like to surround ourselves by people who say the same things as us, it's so boring. It's so boring. People live in an echo chamber. An echo chamber, that's not life, and it's certainly not Klal Yisrael. The beauty of Klal Yisrael, I'll say, is there's a lot of Jews with a lot of opinions, and yes, a lot of them are uninformed, and a lot of them are incorrect, and a lot of them are just wrong. Feel free to see me after this year for all the correct opinions, right? Shitas and positions in life. I'm happy, it's going to be free, right? And I'll say, but Lamaisa. So what happens when you see hundreds of people and they're all saying the same thing? That's not it. Something's off there. You're in a room with a bunch of people and they're all saying different stuff. That's Klal Yisrael. And Achdus is that moment when you can embrace, even after that vociferous argument. All right, then. So Gemara goes weiter. So what happens? So Yoshafat says, I need some more Nevi'im. So Achaz says, why do you need more Nevi'im? Look at all these hundreds of guys that are here. So the Gemara says, I learned this from my father. Signon echad ola lekam Nevi'im. The ancient Nevi'im misnavim signon echad. So ultimately, yes. So what I learned is like this: you could have prophets all espousing the same message, but they'll be about 5 lines up from the bottom, right? But they go, but none of them give it over in the same way, right? They all get the same message, but don't give it over. So the fact that Yoshaphat is sitting there, and these hundreds of prophets who I just want to point out. These were not false. In other words, the prophets were actually receiving a message. But remember, the whole thing was skewed because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Achav to go out to war to fall in battle. So Yoshaphat's like, what? You guys are all saying the same exact thing. That doesn't make any sense. So therefore, again, Yoshaphat needs new Nevi'im. Okay? So the Gemara goes weiter. So good. What's the example of a Navi who gives over something that was not said over? Tim Kigon, Hananya ben Azur, so this is like Hananya ben Azur. What happened with Hananya ben Azur? Yirmiyah b'shuka elyon. Yirmiyah was standing in the upper marketplace. V'ka'amar, ko'amar shem tzavakos, hineni shover es keshes ilam. So Yirmiyah is giving a prophecy. Right? And Yirmiyah says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to go ahead and break the bow of Elam. Elam was another nation. Elam. I'm going to break the bow. In other words, I'm going to defeat Elam. Okay, so what happens? Nosa Chananya kavachomer biatzmo. So Chananya hears this prophecy of Yirmiyah, and he makes kavachomer. What's the kavachomer? Ma Elam shalo ba'el lazar as Bavel. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu nishover as keshes Elam. So Elam, they came to help Bavel. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to say that he's going to break the bow of Elam, he's going to defeat them. Then Al-Achas Kama V'Kama, Kastim Atzman Al-Achas Kama V'Kama. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is breaking the primary foe of Klal Yisrael, soon he's going to break the secondary foes of Klal Yisrael. Who was the secondary foe of Klal Yisrael? Bavel. So Chananya made a kavachomer. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to go out and defeat Elam, he's certainly going to go out and defeat Bavel. So what happens? He goes out and he prophesies, Aseihu b'shuka tachton, Amar, Ko'amar Hashem, Shavarti es ol melech Bavel. This is fascinating. So Hananya hears a prophecy of Yirmiyah. He makes a kavachomer from that prophecy, and then he espouses a new prophecy. Only one issue. Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't say it. Only a problem. Abaye. What are you talking about? This is not an example of someone who heard a prophecy given to his friend and then gives it over. Hananya made this up. He made this up. To which the Gemara says, "Kevan des Yaev kavachomer lemedrash keman de itmar le dami." So ultimately, again, keman de itmar le dami who knew lo ne'amar lo. So I'll say ultimately again because it's made from kavachomer. It's interesting because he's the kavachomer, and because the kavachomer is one of the exegetical principles. So the Gemara treats this like a case of saying over a prophecy that was not given over to you. Okay, beautiful. Was an example of one who prophesizes in the name of prophecy. We'll say last line. You could go Nevi Habal. So we'll say this is the easy one. Nevi Habal. Poor Nevi Habal. So again, Baal was an Avodah Zarah. He had his own Nevi'im. So, and again, obviously, he prophesied in the name of Baal things that were not true. Next, Takovesh es Nevu also. We'll say incredible. What's an example of withholding your own prophecy? Kigon Yona ben Amitai. Yona, right? Yona, remember again, Yona gets a prophecy, and what does he do? He runs away. He'll say, you understand what the Kovesh is Nevuah. So many of us are over on that every single day. Every day the Ribono Shel Olam whispers in my ear, and what does he say? You could be great. You could accomplish great things. And right, just like again, the Gemara says, every day Bas Kol Yotzeis and says, Shuvu Banim Shovevim. Every day a Baskol comes out and says, do tshuva. And I hear this prophecy, and I hear this Baskol, and what do I do with it? I suppress it, and I ignore it. That's Kovesh Nevu Aso. Every day prophecy comes to us. Every day HaKadosh Baruch Hu whispers to us. Every day opportunity comes for us to self-actualize and become great. And if we suppress it, and we don't utilize it, and we don't actualize it, that's called Kovesh Es Nevu Aso. Yona ben Amitai. V'amavarta divrei Navi. Who's the one? What's an example of going and disregarding the words of a Navi? We'll say Amud Beis. So the Gemara says Chavrei de Micha. These are the friends of Micha. Now, who are the friends of Micha? Rashi says Chavrei de Micha. T'chsev ish acham mivnei anavim amar al re'eo b'dvar Hashem nikani na zeh haya Michayo ben Yemalya shenesnave osa hayom al achav lipo biyad aram. So again, this was also one of the prophets who was prophesying that day about Achav. T'chsev v'ish acham mivnei anavim amar al re'eo b'dvar Hashem nikani na. So this Navi Micha went over to a guy and said, in the name of God, hit me. So this is part of the prophecy. He was trying to show ultimately again that Klal Yisrael was going to be successful ultimately over Aram, but that Achav was going to fall in battle. So the man refused to hit Michayo, and what happens? The guy was consumed by a lion. Okay, so if the Navi tells you to hit him, right? And because again, in this case, he didn't hit the Navi and he was consumed by a lion. Obviously, more to that story, but at a different time. The Navi sha'avra al divrei atzmo was an example of a Navi who violated his own words. Kigon Ido Hanavi. His Navi Ido. So what happened with Ido? Dechsev ki kein siva osi. So let's listen to this. So Ido was ultimately, again, was commanded to go ahead. This was the story of Yeravam ben Nevat. Right? Yeravam ben Nevat was the first king over the split Malchus. Remember again, Yeravam ben Nevat, interestingly enough, Yeravam ben Nevat started out as a good man. He was appointed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He started out as a good man. What ends up happening to good people? Power has a way of corrupting good people. Yeravam ben Nevat understood that if he was going to consolidate his rulership over Malchus Yisrael, he had to prevent Jews from going to the Beis HaMikdash. Because remember again, even once the monarchy split, the great unifier was going to be the Beis HaMikdash. Everybody had to be Ola Regel. If that's the case, Yeravam said people are going to be subservient to the Davidic king and not to me because he has the Beis HaMikdash. So what did he do? Remember again, what did he do? It's actually in Yoni Dioma. He built 2 egels. He built 2 golden calves. Now, in the beginning, he said, it's not Avodah Zarah. Just I'm saving you a trip. You don't have to go ahead and go all the way to the Beis HaMikdash to serve Hashem. Serve here. But what happens? Ultimately, again, it evolved into Avodah Zarah. So Ido confronts Yeravam when he's offering his karbonos by this mizbeach by the Agalim, and Yeravam sticks out his arm, like in an accusatory way, and his arm shriveled up. So Ido was that Navi, but the HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded Ido, when you go, so go do your prophecy, don't stop. Don't eat, don't do anything, nothing. You got to be laser focused on your mission. Okay? So Ido doesn't stop to eat. What happens on the way back? So ultimately, again, what happens on the way back? Ido's passing by. Okay, mission accomplished. Somebody invites him in to eat. Ido says, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm a prophet. I've gone on a mission. So the guy says, you're not going to believe it. You're a prophet. I'm a prophet. Right? Come in. Right? We could eat together. So Ido goes ahead and makes a mistake. And he goes into this guy's house and he eats. Vayeshev Ido. Uksiv. Vayelech yimseu aryeh. What happens? When Ido left after his meal, he was consumed by a lion. He was devoured by a lion, ultimately, again, for violating his own nevuah, for violating his own words. Which, Rabbi say, by the way, is also the story is such a profound metaphor. Because what was Chash Baruch Hu telling Ido? If you want to accomplish something in life, then what? What do you have to do, Rabbi say? You have to be focused. So the Ramchal speaks about this in the Shar HaZrizos. He says, what's Zrizos? He says, why do you need Zrizos? Zrizos is necessary. We don't always appreciate this because more often than not, the reason we don't accomplish in life is why? Why? Oh, everyone here and never. Okay, I'll tell you why. Everyone else knows. Because we get distracted. Right? I'm on task, and I get distracted. This happens all the time. It happens with this, happens with everything in life. You just get distracted, and suddenly again, I'm off. So the Ramchal writes, the whole yisod of Zrizos is, when you start something, just get it done. Don't get distracted, because the moment you get distracted, that's usually when you're not going to go ahead and accomplish. So it's really incredible. So what the Navi is saying over here, this story is, it's an actual story. It's not a metaphorical, it's an actual story. But the metaphor for us is so broad. Hashbara says to Ido, you have a mission, don't go to eat. Don't get distracted. Don't do anything. Just stay focused on your task. And Ido gets distracted. And what happens the moment you get distracted? You get consumed by the lion. And metaphorically, what that means is, once you get distracted, that's it. You lose your momentum. And by the way, we know this. Once you get distracted, even if you get back on task, what happens? It's not the same. You've lost the momentum. This is what I will say, for example, even by learning. Right? By learning, there's this yisod of learning biritzifos. Right? What does it mean to learn biritzifos? To learn for a certain amount of time, undistracted. right? Even 5 minutes of learning besuros is better than 45 minutes of distracted learning. We know this just from our own lives. Because what happens, right? I'm learning and then I'm here. I'm learning and then I'm here. I'm learning and then I'm this. Okay, it's very nice. Shkoyach. And at the end of the day, what did you get? You got 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there. And the sum total of it, that's not avodas Hashem. It's not avodas Hashem. What Baruch Hu wants of us is be in it. Be in it. Even if it's only for 5 minutes, be in it. Because the moment you get distracted is the moment you get consumed by the lion. Such an incredible yisod. Tani Tana Kamid Rav Chisda. Hakovish is nevuah. So loga. So listen to this. Person goes ahead and withholds his prophecy. He gets malchus. Amalei, man da'achal tamei ba'arbala laki. Now this is a Talmudic expression, which literally means one who eats dates out of a basket should get malchus. Now, what's wrong with eating dates out of a basket? And the answer is nothing. So it's an expression. It's much better in the Aramaic, right? But right, in other words, it's an expression that's used like, what did he do wrong? In other words, now here, the Gemara is not asking over here about what a person did wrong if they withhold their prophecy. What the Gemara is really asking is, how is anyone going to know? Right? In other words, so you have Navi A, right? And Navi A withholds his prophecy. Okay. How exactly does anyone know that he withheld his prophecy? So the Gemara says, Man Masri Bey, who's giving him Asra? Amar Abaye Chabri Nevi. I'm sorry. Amar Abaye Chabri Nevi. So Manaya, the Amar Abaye Dechsev Kilo Yasa Shemel Kim Davar Kim Gala Sado. So who's going to know? His fellow prophets. Because this goes what we said before. That in general, this is interesting, that apparently the way prophecy works is, it's often given to more than one person. Again, each person gets it differently and each person conveys it differently, but it's given to more than one. So because of that, if you have a Navi who withheld prophecy, apparently other people know about it and they'll know if a particular Navi did not share it. Okay? The Dilma Hadri Bey. So what else is interesting? Well, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu retracted. In other words, maybe he gave a Nevuah and then he changed his mind, so to speak, changed his mind. And he said, the Hadri Bey, Uduye Have Modi the Kulhu Navi. Again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sometimes changes nevuos, and if he were to do that, then what? He would inform the group of Nevi'im as well. Yona, the Haji Bey Veladu. Ooh. But 1 second. By Yona, the story of Yona, HaKadosh Baruch Hu changed his mind, and he didn't tell Yona. Right? Yona, remember again, Yona finds out with everybody else HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not destroying Ninveh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not go ahead and give him any advance warning, to which the Gemara says, no. Yona me'ikara, Ninveh ne'apachas amri. So it's very important. The Lashon of Yona said, Ba'od arba'im yom, v'ninveh ne'apachas. Now what does ne'apachas mean? What does it mean? Turned over. Turned over just meant, in 40 days from now, something is going to dramatically change in Ninveh. The change could be, they could all become ridiculous Bali Tshuva, or the change could be the city is going to be destroyed. So in Yonah's words itself was the actual possibility for two circumstances. Amrlei, ihu lo yada, ila tova, ila ra. Again, it was an open-ended nevuah. Again, and we'll say it's incredible. By the way, I just want to point out, part of the reason, ultimately, why do we read Sefer Yonah and Yom Kippur? It is the paradigmatic story of tshuva. It's also the paradigmatic story, or the metaphor, that our life is like this open-ended possibility. What does it mean? It means what you make of it. As much as the HaKohen Baruch Hu knows what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, at the end, for us, our lives are this open-ended, choose-your-own-adventure type of matzav. In another 40 days, the city of Nineveh is going to be overturned. Is it good or is it bad? It's up to you. What your life is going to be, who you're going to be, the person you're going to become, it's up to you. Incredible. So I will say, so ultimately, again, one ignores the words of a Navi. Mina yada di yanish. So we'll say, so here's what's interesting. Now, if a Navi says something, and how do I know he's a Navi? Right? So someone says, I sing in the name of God, right? So, shkoyach, right? So in other words, how do I know that he's a Navi, that I have to answer him, that I have to listen to him? Do you have le'os? He gives a sign. He's a sign. Obviously, I will say, again, you got to prove like your Navi credentials, right? So in other words, you can't just roll in and say that you're a Navi. You got to prove it in some way. So the Gemara says, but Micha didn't give an os. He didn't give a sign, and yet people are punished for not adhering to his, or not heeding his nevuah. Hecha de muchzak sheni. No, it's different. And I was going to say, a Navi doesn't have to give an os every single time he says a nevuah. Rather, I will say why. Once you have a Navi who's muchzak, what does muchzak mean? They know he's a Navi. They know he's a Navi. Okay, so once we know he's a Navi, obviously I'm going to listen to his words. We'll say, get ready for this. Because if you don't say this, Avram Bahara Moriah, Hecha Shama le Yitzchak. Again, why did Yitzchak listen to his father? Right? So again, when Avram Avinu says to Yitzchak, I'm going to shecht you, Yitzchak should have said, Yitzchak should have said, the old man's lost it, right? That's what he should have said. That's what he should have said. So why does Yitzchak listen to his father? Because he knew his father was a prophet. Right? So Gemara says, and Yitzchak never said that, hey, maybe we should talk about this a little bit, you want to tell me, maybe you want to go over the conversation with God, right? Perhaps you missed a little something or nuance, maybe God was speaking in metaphorical terms, But if you notice, by the way, there's no give and take, right? There's no dialogue. Avram says it, and Yitzchak listens. Why? Because Avram was muchzak. Avram was a Navi, was muchzak as a Navi. Furthermore, again, other examples of this. Eliyahu Bahar HaKarmel, Hechi Samche Alei Va'avdei Shchutei Chutz. We'll say, Eliyahu, incredible story of Eliyahu Bahar HaKarmel, right? What happens? This was the ultimate showdown between Eliyahu and the Nevi Abban. Remember this story? Right? Everybody builds an altar. Eliyahu builds an altar. The Nevi Habal builds an altar. And there's a theological showdown. Whoever brings fire down from heaven first is the true God. So what happens? So remember again, the Navi says, Nevi Abal, they're crying out, they're lacerating themselves, all kinds of crazy stuff. What does Eliyahu Navi? Do you remember what Eliyahu Navi does? He submerges, puts a lot of water on top of his altar, right? On top of his altar. And with all of that, what does he do? Quick tefillah, fire comes down from the heavens, consumes everything. This is beautiful, except there's only one problem. It is a chiyuv misa to offer up karbanos outside of the Mishkan, outside of the Mikdash, outside of the Mishkan, right? So what's happening over here? So how is Eliyahu Navi able to do shchutei chutz? Again, Shmuel told him. Now but Eliyahu, come on, right? Don't you need to give an os? Rather, both say, what do you see from here? The Gemara says, rather, Elahecha demuchzak sheni. No. Once a prophet has established his prophetic credentials, he no longer has to give an os every single day. I will say, by the way, do you know what the postscript to that story is, right? About Eliyahu Nevi Abal. What happened in the next parak? Klal Yisrael is worshipping Baal again. This is where Eliyahu Navi gives his famous statement, Ad masai atem poschim ashtei asifim. How long are you going to straddle the fence for? I will say, and this also gives rise to a very important yesod, which is, miracles don't work. Miracles don't create emunah. They don't. Again, we'll say, just passing parasha also, Klal Yisrael was standing by Har Sinai, and what happens? Days later, they built a golden calf. Miracles don't work. I will say, you would think, how many missiles were fired from Iran? Right? How many missiles were fired from Iran and not one hit? So you would think again, Klal Yisrael would have undergone massive tshuva movement, achtos everywhere. Miracles don't work. Miracles are great. Miracles are like fireworks. Right? What happens when you go to watch fireworks? What happens? You ever hear someone who comes back from 4th of July fireworks say, you know what? That was life-altering. You know what? I am just going to become a better person, whatever it is, a better citizen, whatever it is, right? No, what happens with fireworks? You watch it, it's entertaining, and you go, right? You see all the videos from the missiles from Iran, it's entertaining. And what happened? People just go like, let's say, change doesn't come from miracles. Change comes from hard work. Change comes from avoda. Change comes ultimately, again, from putting in the effort day in and day out. Miracles are beautiful, and they could create momentary bursts of inspiration, but they do not affect cathartic, comprehensive change. That only comes from the inglorious work, day in and day out. Incredible. All right, let's go back there. Sundays are the best, by the way. Sundays are the best. Maybe we should push the second meeting to 9:30. But all right, it's fine. But it says, so now, by the way, now that we mentioned Avram Avinu, Gary, we'll say, I just want to tell you, this week, just ridiculous Gemara. So watch this. Akedah. But now that we mentioned Avram Avinu, that Avram did not need to give a sign to Yitzchak. Why not? Because he was muchzak. So now the Gemara talks about the Akedah. Vayechad dvaramai. Lav Elokim nisas Avram. Acher mai. After what? It says it was after these things, and then Hashem tested Avram. This is the Akedah. So afterwards, Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra, Achar Dvarav Shel Satan. After the words of the Satan, what did the Satan say? Dichsev, Vayigdal Hayelad Vayigamal. The pasuk says, by Yitzchak, this is after the birth of Yitzchak, the boy got up and he was weaned. He grew up and he was weaned. Now remember, they used to make like a big suda for weaning. Amar Satan Nechash Baruch Hu. The Satan said to Hashem, Ribono shel olam, Zakein Zeh. So look, this Satan refers to Am Yisroel so disparagingly, right? This old man. So Chananta Lemei Shana Pribaten. So he gave him a child at the age of 100 years old. Because of the Sha'asalo Hayalo Tur Echad Gozel Echad Lahakru Lefanecha. So the Satan says, Baruch Hu, he gave this old man so much. And all of these besuros that he made, he never even offered you up a little carbon. Never even like a pigeon, a turtle dove, nothing. Forget about a real animal. A little bird, nothing. Amar lo klum asa ela b'shil b'no. Baruch Hu says, Satan, come on. Everything Avram did, he did for his son. Imani omer lo zaveches bincha lefanai miyad zovcho. If I were to tell Avram to sacrifice his son, he would do it. Satan, you saying, give me. If I were to ask Avram to give me his own son, he would do it. Miyad ve'elokim nisas Avram. Immediately afterwards, Hashem tested Avram. Shabbos say this is interesting. So the Gemara seems to understand the Akedah. The genesis of the Akedah was this conversation between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Satan. Now we're not finished. Vayomer, kach noas vincha. Hashem says to Am Avinu, please take your son Yitzchak and offer him up. Amr b'Shim ben Arba Rabba, ein na ela lashon bakasha. Now na is a request. Is a request. So listen to this. The Gemara says, Mashal v'melech basra v'dam sha'amdu lo milchamos harbe. So what could this can be compared to? This can be compared to a human king who waged many wars. We'll say first of the intermediate wide lines. V'hayala gibor echad v'natzchan. And this king, he had the guy, like the one valiant warrior who was like really responsible for all of his victories. L'yamim amda alav milchama chazaka. The king faced the most intense battle of his monarchy. Amrlo, he says to his most valiant soldier, please, amod li b'milchama. Stand strong, be victorious in this battle. Shalo yomer rishonos ein bahen mamish. Because if you fail in this battle, this most important battle, what will it do? It will take away from all the previous victories. But if you stand firm in this most intense of battles, not only will you have victory here, but it cements the previous victories as well. Fail here, and it erases all the previous victories. Be successful now, and it cements everything which came before it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar li Avram Avinu. So to Hashem said to Avram, Nisisicha b'kama nisyonos. I've given you many tests over the years. Va'amarta b'kulan. And you've been successful in all of them. Achshav amod li b'nisayos. And now I'm asking you to please be successful in this battle as well. Shelo yomru ein mamish berishonim. That people should not say that there is no merit to the previous tests. I will say, so this is a fascinating Gemara. What does this mean? So first of all, there's a tremendous yesod in human nature. Human nature is all about what have you done for me lately. Right? People, right? If you fail someone, generally what human nature is that what? We remember the failure of right now, and it erases all of the things that came before it, which is just interesting. Right? So if the valiant warrior fails in this battle, all of the success of the past are erased. But I will say, but what does this mean? What is HaKodesh Baruch Hu telling Avram Avinu? So there's a beautiful idea by the Sasamas. The Sasamas, I want to quote to you, he says something amazing. He says, Aidei asar nisyonos, shenisnas Avram Avinu, nispashtu kol ha-kolchos sheyesh libnei Yisrael, lehiskaber ala tevla min-nisayon. With every single one of Avram Avinu's nisyonos, what he did is, he embedded another koach in the DNA of Klal Yisrael. Avram Avinu is our father. And with every test that he succeeded in, every nisayon that he overcame, he endowed us with a certain level of strength. What did Akedas Yitzchak represent? He says, Akedas Yitzchak represent, at the end of the day, Koach Meruba Shamasiras Nefesh. What Akedas Yitzchak represented was a willingness to give everything for God. Avram Avinu already demonstrated a willingness to give himself. This is even more. A willingness to even give his child. It represented the ability and the willingness to give anything and everything for the Ribono Shel Olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol pleads with Avram Avinu and says, you need to pass this. Do you know why you need to pass this? Not for you. That's not for you. But if you pass this, then you embed this koach, within the spiritual DNA of Klal Yisrael. If you go to Har HaMoriah and you take your son and you're willing to offer him as a korban, what you will embed within Klal Yisrael is the koach and the ability to give anything and everything for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if you do this, we have everything. But if you fail, then the truth is you leave the people deficient. And I both say, isn't that incredible? At the end of the day, Adam Avinu passes this test, as we know, and he embeds within us his koach mesiras nefesh. We're living through times like this. We're living in times of incredible mesiras nefesh. Not a day goes by that we don't hear stories of dramatic spiritual heroism. Right? Did you see one of the most striking pictures that I saw coming out of Eretz Yisrael and Purim were these little girls who were dressed up as Agam Burger. Dressed up as Agam Burger. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bench with every single bracha and Shemaim ad me'ever esim shanim tovos. Why? What does she represent? What does she represent? She represents this incredible koach. This koach of Shabbos, this koach of Yiddishkeit, this koach of Emunah. Right? This koach, where does that come from? Where does that come from? Where does a girl, she's a child. She's a child. Where does a child get that koach? It comes from Avram Avinu. When Avram Avinu was willing to go out and give everything for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he embedded in our spiritual DNA the ability and the willingness to do the same. And therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Kachno, please. You have to pass this test. Because it's not just about you. The strength you're going to summon up, the strength you're going to muster for this nisayon, it is the strength that is going to become part of the spiritual DNA of your children, and the strength that they're going to access throughout the ages. Because Avram Avinu was successful in his nisayon, he gave us the koach to be successful in our nisyonos as well. All right, I will say, tremendous. All right, again, I will say a lot of these gemaras this week, a lot of Agarata this week, so tremendous week ahead of us. Shkayach, everyone.